As folks are continuing to walk in, allow me to introduce our advisory board members. I'll list them all, and then we can give them a round of applause. Naomi Caldwell, David Rose, Bob Laguerre, Patrick Kelleher, Richard Ward, Scott Ulrich, William Totten, Paul Diedrich, and Raymond Gonzalez, our Colorado Air and Spaceport Advisory Board. It has been an amazing 11 months since we were granted our site operator's license for Colorado Air and Spaceport. Today we have a great program for you. We're going to discuss what has been accomplished, and more importantly is the question that we always ask in Adams County: what's next? For Colorado Air and Spaceport, you're going to learn more about our future ambitions, our on-site operations, and the aerospace industry in Colorado and across the globe. Before we get to our panel discussions, we have a handful of great speakers who will share their perspective on everything from economic development, political support, and what's possible at Colorado Air and Spaceport. That political support that I mentioned comes from our local, state, and federal delegations. And unfortunately, we won't have a chance to hear from all of them today, so if you are an elected official, we'd like for you to please stand so we can show our appreciation for your ongoing support of Colorado Air and Spaceport and the aerospace industry in Colorado. Again, thank you very much. We'll begin our formal presentation with our co-host for this afternoon's event. Please help me welcome the Executive Director of Accelerate Colorado, Kevin Doran.
Well, thank you, Jim, and thank you to the Colorado Air and Spaceport for having us here today. We're proud to co-host this event, and we are excited to see all of you here with us as we look toward the future of this important Colorado asset. For those of you who are not familiar with Accelerate Colorado, we were founded about 15 years ago with a group of like-minded organizations and local governments who saw the need to address federal policies affecting Colorado. Now, a decade and a half later, Accelerate Colorado is a well-respected and integral player amongst our congressional delegation and the administration, helping to shape federal policy issues critical to the state's economic development, our top industries, and our business community. Just as when Accelerate Colorado was founded, our priority remains on finding common ground and advocating together for what's best for Colorado by utilizing a member-driven approach to developing our policy platform and building consensus amongst our federal leaders on solutions that benefit our state as a whole. Our membership, with interests ranging from aerospace and defense to water and natural resources and almost everything in between, has grown into a powerful and diverse statewide coalition with a unified voice. And for the last 7 years, Accelerate Colorado's unified voice has included partnering with our congressional delegation, the FAA, and the current and previous administrations to help see the spaceport license come to fruition. But of course, the license being issued was only the first step, and our work is not done. The policy issues surrounding the spaceport will remain a focus of Accelerate Colorado for years to come. And this showcase will help to keep the spaceport at the center of the federal, state, and private sector's attention, which is what we need to transform it into the most sought-after spaceport in the U.S. and around the world. Working together, we can ensure this new and now critical asset will serve as an economic and research catalyst both for Colorado and the aerospace industry. We are proud to be a part of this magnificent event, and you can find more information about Accelerate Colo included in the information on your tables. But we thank you all for joining us and being a part of this as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kevin. As he mentioned, the process to acquire the license for Colorado Air and Spaceport started more than 7 years ago and has been championed throughout by our Adams County Commissioners. Our next presenter currently serves as the chair of the Adams County Board of Commissioners. Please give a warm welcome to Commissioner Steve O'Dorisio.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you very much. Let me begin by recognizing my fellow county commissioners who are here today. Our vice chair, Emma Pinter, if you could please rise. Eva Henry. Mary Hodge. And Chaz Tedesco, is working out there, so he couldn't make it today. But we want to thank everyone, because if it weren't for this outstanding team and the teams that came before us, I know we have Skip Fisher. Where's Skip Fisher? One of our former county commissioners here. And if there are any others, please stand. But this has been truly a long process where we've worked on this for a number of years, and we want to say it is truly a team effort. It's been less than a year since we were granted the site operator license from the FAA. But as Jim mentioned, that path to get that license started long before that. And I know Congressman Ed Perlmutter remembers our trip to DC to visit our federal delegation last year in March. At that point, we were in the dark, wondering what was going to happen, hoping that our application for the FAA license would be sufficient, hoping that it would not be insufficient. Our top priority for that trip was securing bipartisan support for our license. And we left Washington with a commitment from our delegation from both sides of the aisle, not only to sign a letter of support, but to advance the conversation throughout the federal process. And that support from our federal delegation proved critical in our success. Thank you to our federal delegation. In August of last year, many of us gathered in this amazing venue to celebrate our site operator license. And in the 11 months that have passed, we have worked hard on that site operator license with operators such as Reaction Engines, and signed a letter of intent with our future operator, PD Aerospace, our distinguished guest today. But we're not done. In fact, this is only the beginning. We believe our success will serve to accelerate the pace of innovation throughout the aerospace community in all of Colorado. This Board of County Commissioners is committed to investing in this facility and partnering with our world-class universities and established aerospace companies in Colorado to create a catalyst for economic development and the advancement of interplanetary science. We are familiar with Silicon Valley in California, known as the home for high-tech companies and innovation in that sector. Now, along the Front Range of Colorado, we are known as Aerospace Alley. And we are excited to play our role in the continued growth of Colorado Air and Spaceport and the aerospace industry. It's an economic engine, and boy, today, that engine is hot, and you guys are all part of it. Thank you all for joining us today. The Board of County Commissioners is excited to be part of this event. We look forward to working with you and seeing these presentations this afternoon. At this time, I'm going to give the microphone back to Jim, because you don't want politicians talking all day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. A few weeks ago, we had the privilege of hosting our Lieutenant Governor Diane Primavera at Colorado Air and Spaceport for a tour of the grounds. Members of county leadership and our Air and Spaceport Director Dave Ruppel were excited to receive her support, and there was a surprise element of that tour that I know the Lieutenant Governor will remember for years to come. I'm sure she plans on sharing some of that story with you today, so please provide a warm welcome for our next speaker, the Lieutenant Governor of Colorado, Ms. Diane Primavera.
Thank you. I'm a little bit vertically challenged compared to Jim. Today I'll keep it short because I know that our county commissioner said you don't want to hear politicians talk all day long, so we'll keep it short. But thank you, Jim, for the introduction. And he's really correct that the tour is something that myself and also the staff that were with me will look back on in years to come as a commercial development and advancements in research continue at Colorado Air and Spaceport. The surprise portion of that tour that Jim mentioned was a stroke of good fortune. As we were touring the facility, we arrived at the east portion of the property where Reaction Engines is testing their pre-cooler technology. And the team at Reaction Engines, led by Dr. Adam Dissel, was incredibly gracious and provided a full tour of their operation. The team of engineers that they have assembled includes talented men and women who have already advanced aerospace technology at companies like SpaceX. I think that everyone is excited by the idea that hypersonic flight and eventually point-to-point travel will be traced back to this work that's happening at Colorado Air and Spaceport. And as the Vice Chair of the Aerospace States Association and head of Colorado's Space Commission, I lead a group of industry stakeholders, including aerospace companies, military leaders, academic organizations, and economic development groups that collaborate to make Colorado a center of excellence for space exploration. Working with Governor Polis, we will continue to invest in researching and developing our space program, along with our aerospace workforce to continue to lead the way in discovering the great beyond. So thank you so much for having me here today, and I'm excited to be here for this event, and I look forward to an afternoon of aerospace. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Primavera. As you see on the board behind me, our hashtag for today is Aerospace Alley. So if you're going to take some pictures either during the presentations or after during the networking sessions, we have a nice Colorado Air and Spaceport background, and it's hard to beat all the photo ops that you have in here. Tag it with Aerospace Alley as we continue with our program today. We're looking forward to seeing all those social media posts. As we mentioned earlier, our congressional delegation has provided incredible ongoing support to Colorado Air and Spaceport. And you're about to hear a very passionate speaker when it comes to space exploration. We're excited to have Congressman Ed Perlmutter here with us today. Congressman?
Another vertically challenged person here. Good afternoon, everybody, and it's my pleasure and honor to be here again today. And as many of you know, I am on the Space Exploration Subcommittee in the Congress. I'm a space geek. And with the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, it brought me back to that day 50 years ago as I watched one of the most awe-inspiring events in our nation's history. I was 16 years old, and you can now do the math, figure out how old I am, and my family lived in Wheat Ridge at the time. I remember watching in our living room, lime green shag carpet and all. It was a family event, and we were all glued to the TV as we watched with pride and amazement. The anniversary also serves as a reminder of Americans' desire to explore the universe and our passion for innovation. As President Kennedy said in his May 1961 speech, this country of the United States was not built by those who waited and rested and wished to look behind them. This country was conquered by those who move forward, and so will space. And that's exactly what we're doing right here in Colorado. Last year we celebrated a milestone, the Colorado Air and Spaceport receiving their operator's license. As one of several horizontal launch facilities in the world, I didn't say vertical launch, horizontal launch facilities in the world. That's an inside joke, people. Colorado Air and Spaceport will be able to utilize our existing aerospace infrastructure and attract new businesses and capabilities. We have something unlike anything else in the world, with a world-class international airport and a spaceport right next to it with a major highway and rail. Nobody else in the country or the world has anything like this. So we're very fortunate, and we appreciate PD Aerospace for seeing that thing that we have that nobody else has. It will serve as a hub for commercial space, transportation, research, and development, which will benefit Adams County and the entire state of Colorado. Colorado's aerospace economy is strong, and it has a bright road ahead. We have everything from large aerospace companies like Lockheed Martin building the Orion crew vehicle, which will take our astronauts to Mars by 2033, and Sierra Nevada Corporation building the Dream Chaser vehicle to take cargo and supplies to the International Space Station. We also have hundreds of smaller companies, many of which are represented here today, manufacturing components or providing important services for the aerospace industry. You pair this industry with Colorado's excellent higher learning institutions and our can-do spirit, we are built for success. I want to thank everyone for being here today and for their ongoing support of the Colorado Air and Spaceport. We have an exciting journey ahead, so let's get going. Thank you very much.
I told you he was passionate about space. I didn't want to go as far as to call him a space geek. I'm going to leave that to him every time. But thank you so much for your ongoing support in those remarks today. We mentioned our honored guests are from PD Aerospace. I'd like to take a moment and introduce you to some of them. You'll hear from Mr. Shuji Ogawa, the Chief Executive Officer, in just a few moments. Here he is. He'll be part of the panel. The Chief Strategic Officer is Mr. Hiroki Tokunaga. The UAS team is led by Mr. Ansi Kakomaki. Miss Arisa Kuroda, who works on their manned mission team, had to catch a flight back to Tokyo about an hour ago. She was a part of the delegation throughout the week and a valuable resource for us throughout. And also from ANA Holdings, Daiichi Kumaji. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out we had the greatest interpreter in the world, Shin Seke. Congressman Jason Crow was unfortunately not able to join us today, but really wanted to be a part of today's proceedings. So he and his staff put together a brief video that we'd like to share with you now. Here's Congressman Jason Crow.
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Crow. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there today in person, but thank you for letting me join you over video. This month, we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the first Americans to walk on the moon. It's a reminder of how the sky and stars have inspired us for millennia, and some of America's greatest innovators helped us get there. The 6th District of Colorado houses some of America's greatest air and space infrastructure. The Colorado Air and Spaceport is working to redefine suborbital transport. Their work is growing the community, boosting local tourism, residential and retail development. In neighboring Arapahoe County, Buckley Air Force Base's host unit is the 460th Space Wing, which performs global infrared surveillance and missile warning. With almost 200,000 Coloradans working in a space-related field, it's a source of pride for our community. That's why I'm fighting in Congress to reestablish U.S. Space Command at Buckley Air Force Base or in Colorado. It would be an incredible boost to our local economy and the small and large businesses that power it. Thanks for everything you do, and let's keep working together to bring Colorado's aerospace community to new heights.
I think that gives you a pretty good idea of the extensive support we have received from our congressional delegation. And as I mentioned, it crossed party lines and included additional representatives along with both Senators Bennett and Gardner, who are in session today in DC. Throughout the process, the county also developed a strong relationship with the FAA's Office of Commercial Space. Our next presenter has more than 2 decades of experience in the office, commonly known as AST. Please help me welcome Deputy Administrator for Commercial Space, Kelvin Coleman. Great to see you. I figured you'd want to hold this hand.
Yeah, I'll hold it. Thank you. Good afternoon. It's great to be here. I want to first thank all the folks here in Colorado, thank the folks at Colorado Air and Spaceport for the invitation and to have me out this afternoon. It's wonderful to get outside of Washington, so I appreciate it from that standpoint as well. You guys have done a great job here in Colorado. When we say accelerate Colorado, no kidding, you really mean accelerate Colorado. A year ago when we licensed the spaceport here, and it took a long time, it took 7 years to get it done. We worked through a lot of hard issues, a number of challenges, and what that showed was the diligence, the persistence, the patience, the ingenuity of Colorado Air and Spaceport to get that done, and that's what space is all about. But when we did that a year ago, we didn't expect to see companies in here looking to launch this quickly. So it was great for me to take part in a discussion this morning with PD Aerospace and see the progress that they're making towards actually making commercial space launch activities a reality here in the state of Colorado. That's pretty darn exciting, and we're excited about that. You know, Secretary of Transportation Elaine Chao oftentimes talks about this being a period of rocket renaissance, and indeed it is. Last year, there was about 32 launches in the U.S. This year, we're going to see somewhere on the order of about 45. Next year, there's going to be more than that, about 56 launches. So launch activities are really taking off in the U.S., no pun intended. We have about 12 licensed spaceports in the U.S., Colorado being one of them, of course. And we're here to support those activities and make sure those activities are viable. Just recently, our office set up an Office of Spaceports, which is intended to lend itself to the care and feeding of our nation's spaceports. We want to see more activities from our nation's spaceports. We want to make sure that those activities are properly and safely integrated into the National Aerospace System. So we're working very diligently and hard on that. Also, you may have heard of the President's initiative, Space Policy Directive 2, which focuses on streamlining government regulations. And so while over the course of our more than 30-year history, we've never seen a public casualty or injury, we have a perfect safety record. We want to maintain that. Public safety is job one for us. But we also want to lend ourselves to the innovation and the progress that this industry is making. So our rulemaking efforts, which is intended to streamline our regulations, is well underway. We began that in April of this year. We've extended our comment period twice now, and we're receiving important feedback from stakeholders like yourself on how we can improve and make these regulations better. Again, our regulations have proven us well over the course of time, but of course there's room for improvement, as we've seen tremendous strides made in this industry over the course of the last 30 years. And so with that, we're really grateful to be here, and like we always say in Washington, we're here to help. So please lean on us for anything that you need from our office, and we'll be happy to oblige and help you. Thank you for your time.
We want to thank Kelvin not only for offering those remarks, but this morning he met us at the Adams County Government Center to begin the discussions with PD Aerospace. It was a very valuable 2-hour meeting, a lot of information, so we're very grateful that he was able to catch a flight last night and enjoy some clean mountain air for a couple of days. So what's on the ground right now at Colorado Air and Spaceport, and what are we doing to improve operations and opportunities? The director of Colorado Air and Spaceport is not only passionate about aerospace, he used to fly a helicopter just like one that they have here in the hangar. Let's give a warm welcome to Dave Ruppel.
Well, I want to say thanks to the FAA for being here, and Kelvin, we appreciate your partnership and have throughout the process. Thanks to our local and federal representatives, and of course to all of you for being here. I feel like it should be probably welcome back. Most of you were here for our presentation after we got the license, and I just appreciate the ongoing support that you've given us. What I wanted to do here was just to talk a little bit about, kind of narrow things down, talk a little bit about what's going on at the Air and Spaceport. So as mentioned, we're the number 11 of 12 spaceports in the country. Most of them, as you can see, are located around the coast. We're a little bit unique in our location here in the middle of the country, and especially our proximity to such a great aerospace economy and to an international airport and all of those kind of things. So a lot of advantages there that I think we can offer. Narrowing down a little bit more, when you look at our proximity to Denver and to the other, just really to the whole metropolitan area there, there's really an opportunity for companies that do come to the Air and Spaceport to still have access to all of the things that make the metropolitan area great for aerospace, and in addition to that, to have access to a world-class international airport where you can get anywhere you need to go. I think that's one of the things that's been very valuable in our discussion with PD Aerospace, is that ability to say, you know, hey, you can catch a flight, direct flight back to Tokyo, makes that access very easy for them as a foreign company looking at locating here. And I think as you look at the kind of the bird's eye view of what's going on out there, you can see that there's that close proximity to Denver, that proximity to Denver International, and then on top of that, just the development that's going on around the Air and Spaceport. We have large rail-served industrial developments that are going into the south of us and to the east of us. That gives us the option of having companies locate either at one of those developments or on the Air and Spaceport if it's the right kind of a company. And also potentially in the future to have through-the-fence operations that kind of captures both worlds. A company that's located off of the Air and Spaceport but still have access to the runways and to the facilities there as well. So a lot of opportunities. I think, as was mentioned, the ability to also have true multimodal access there, access to the airport, access to interstate, access to heavy rail. Those are things that are unusual, and I think provide another opportunity for companies looking at the air and spaceport. So since we can't be out there, and I know not all of you have been out there, we had some pictures taken from the towers so that you can get a little bit of a feel for what it looks like on the ground out there, or close to the ground at least. So this is looking off to the west from the tower there. You can see our primary hangar complex in this picture, and beyond that, normally you'd be able to see the Front Range. It was a little bit cloudy along the Front Range on this particular day, but you can see that there's a lot of open space. We'll talk more about that in a minute. This is looking off to the northwest, and I think what's prominent in that picture is that you can see Denver International 6 miles away, runway to runway from this perspective. So that's, I think, as I've mentioned in the past, that's both a challenge and an opportunity for us. A little bit of a challenge in terms of the airspace discussions. We continue to have those discussions. That's going to be critical going forward. So that we can make sure that our stakeholders are aware that we're not ignoring that issue. But I think the beauty of the types of technology that we're looking at is that they operate like aircraft, especially when they're in close. So the ability to come and go from the air and spaceport without really negatively impacting the other users of the National Airspace System is something that's a really important piece of what we do going forward. Off to the north and to the east, you can kind of see again that there's a lot of open space out there, not just on the air and spaceport, but off of it. And there's an important aspect of that when we look at our ability to continue to renew our spaceport license in the future. We need to be able to make sure that we can maintain those protections for the people in the area and the businesses around us. The other thing that's in this picture that I think is important is Reaction Engines facility, and you're going to hear a little bit more about that as well. World-class facility, one of a kind for being able to test with high temperature and high airflow for engine testing and other things. So a tremendous facility, a great group of people that have come out there and located out on the air and spaceport, and I won't say anything more about it because I think you're going to hear about that a little bit later. And off to the, sorry, we jumped through that, but to the east of us, one of those business parks that I talked about is located just on the other side of the, I guess about where the color changes there from green to brown. That's about where that eastern business park development is, and then this is looking to the south. That's where the larger of the business parks is located down there. Both of those business parks are moving forward. If you drive out there right now, you're not going to see a lot of activity, but what they are doing right now is going through the permitting process. They've already gotten approval from Union Pacific to be able to bring rail spurs up onto those properties. So everything is coming together for business development in that area as well. So talking a little bit about what we've already got there, I think the beauty of a horizontal launch type facility, a dual use facility like ours, is that most of the infrastructure that we need for space travel and for space planes to use is already there. It's the same kind of infrastructure that we use for airports. There are a few things that we have to look at adding, but in general, just by being an airport, we've already got the majority of the things that we need to be able to move forward. Runways, these are horizontal launch vehicles, so they use runways. We're going to be looking at how do we improve that piece of infrastructure going forward. There are some things that we've identified that we need to do there to improve our runways, but we have the basic runways that we need to support the types of technology that are out there right now. Available hangar space, control towers, business services, all of those things that businesses would look for. Access to utilities, either that we provide or that are provided by our partners from the area here. Room to develop. That 1,000 acres is something that's unusual on airports and spaceports around the country. Just that ability to have space along with all of those other things that we can offer. We started life on then Front Range Airport as a heavy cargo reliever facility. So we've got a very nice wide open geometry to the airport. So that means we've got room to continue to develop that other infrastructure. If we need to lengthen runways or widen runways, we can do that. We have the space to do that already. It's just, we just need money. So if anybody can write us a check, we'd be happy to take that. And I already talked a little bit about those business parks that are right there next to us. So what can we do with that? We're going to hear from some of the current users and people that might be users in the future for that. Just to point out a few of those things, most of the companies that are developing space vehicles are going to be looking at similar needs as they come onto a spaceport, or similar interests in what they're going to do with their business. Some of that has to do with things like space tourism and point-to-point travel in the future, very high-speed travel using low Earth orbit. Those are things that can be done out here. Microgravity experiments, the ability to carry those experiments up and provide dedicated microgravity time to companies that might need that. Those are things that can work out there, and the ability to bring those experiments then right back to where you started from, and be able to take those back and see what happened. Space pilot training is another thing. This is something that happens around the world right now and a lot of other places, but it's challenging in the United States because to do the high performance aircraft type training, most of those aircraft are considered experimental aircraft, so you can't use them for hire. There's congressional work being done, I think, right now to look at ways to change that so that we can at least do that kind of training on spaceports. So in the future, that would be another thing that we could offer, the training for pilots and for astronauts going forward. Research experiments and just again, the ability to do that from right here in Colorado, where we have a lot of companies that are involved in the small sat industry, that are involved in doing research related to spacecraft. All of that would be available out on the Air and Spaceport as well, and those are the kind of things that we want to encourage. And then I think all of the supporting entities, the supporting businesses, whether it's manufacturing, development of vehicles, development of other types of technologies that have carryover into space operations, all of those things we're looking at trying to develop out there. And I think that's all I've got. So, thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. I should mention Dave and representatives from a handful of other companies and organizations will be happy to have further discussions at the rear of the hangar following our presentation when we have some networking time. It is now time to invite our panelists to the stage for our discussion on the value and impact of Colorado Air and Spaceport. Our moderator for the panel is Vicki Lee from the Colorado Space Coalition. We're excited also to have General Jay Lindell from the State Office of Economic Development and International Trade. Shuji Ogawa, the CEO of PD Aerospace, Adrian Tansing from Reaction Engines, Frank Trevino from Exodus Space Corporation, Brian Gulliver from Kimley Horn, and Crystal Morgan from United Launch Alliance. Vicki will guide us through the panel discussion, but we also hope to open the floor later for questions from the audience. Please give them all a warm round of applause as they come to the stage.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It really is wonderful to be here today in support of such an important and exciting Colorado Aerospace event. As I think many of you may know, the Colorado Space Coalition is an initiative of the Metro Denver Economic Development Corporation. And a key part of the Colorado Space Coalition's mission is really to help grow the state's aerospace economy and to help grow our state's many space assets. So thanks to the enormous efforts of Dave Ruppel, the incredible leadership of the Adams County team, our elected officials throughout the state, and also a whole bunch of other industry stakeholders from throughout Colorado, Colorado is now a spaceport state. And that is a tremendous accomplishment. And we now have this incredible, exciting new space asset that we are so thrilled to be able to promote and support. So for this discussion, we're planning to dig into Colorado Air and Spaceport's role in the rapidly growing commercial space industry, and its potential to grow Colorado's space economy and also serve as a globally recognized hub for commercial spaceflight activity. And we've got a really fabulous panel that is going to help us do this today. They seriously have such a breadth and depth of expertise. They're going to really help us, I think, shape out some of these discussion points. So let's start out by asking our panelists to say a few words about themselves and your connection with the space industry. And perhaps it's easiest to just go down the line, starting with Major General Jay Lindell.
Okay, Vicki, thank you very much, and my pleasure to be here today representing the state of Colorado Economic Development. And my role in the State Office of Economic Development is to promote aerospace and the defense industry in Colorado. And I have the honor and pleasure to talk to a lot of groups and exciting to promote this marvelous industry that is really a hub of technology and innovation for the state. And so can't wait to talk more about it here.
Thank you, Vicki. Great to be here. My name is Frank Trevino. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer with Exodus Space. At Exodus Space, we're actually developing a fully reusable, two-stage-to-orbit horizontal launch and horizontal lander space plane, the Astro Clipper. The Astro Clipper, we're going to initially start with a micro version capable of sending about 500 pounds into low Earth orbit and eventually progress to larger versions and eventually look at a human-rated version capable of carrying about 20 people or so.
Awesome. I'm Adrienne Tansing. I'm the Contracts and International Trade Manager at Reaction Engines, Inc. I like to joke that I do everything but engineering there. So we are a UK company that has a US subsidiary here in Colorado. And we are connected to the spaceport because, as mentioned earlier, we have a test facility there, and it's been amazing. We are a UK company focused on hypersonic and space access propulsion, utilizing our breakthrough heat exchanger technology and our Sabre engine. And we're just so happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Crystal.
Hi, I'm Crystal Morgan. I'm with United Launch Alliance, America's most reliable launch provider. We build our rockets and we design and develop them right here in Colorado. We're headquartered here. I run our state and local government affairs and really get involved in what the economic impact is to the state with the industry and the suppliers.
Thank you. Shuji?
Hello, my name is Shuji Ogawa from PDA Space. We are one of the space startup company in Japan. Now we are developing a new type engine. We invented jet mode and rocket mode, the two functions engine. We will use the engine for horizontal space plane, and we will start the space tourism in the future in Denver. We are thinking now. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Brian Gulliver. I lead the aerospace and spaceport practice for Kinley Horn. It's an engineering consulting firm with an office here in Denver. I've been working pretty closely with Front Range Airport in Adams County on the licensing effort of Colorado Air and Spaceport, and I also consult for a number of spaceports around the country that do commercial space launch.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. We're going to begin with some prepared targeted questions for our panelists, but please be aware there's going to be an opportunity for some Q&A later on in the program. So as we move along, start thinking of some questions that you may like to ask of our panelists. You'll have that opportunity. Okay, so when we talk about the commercial space industry, there are many broad definitions. They encompass businesses, both large and small, well-established players, and also those younger entrepreneurial companies. But really, whatever definition we use, reliable and affordable access to space is critical to a successful and a sustainable commercial space economy. So to Brian, you have extensive experience in the planning and design of more than a dozen spaceports and launch facilities. So you've got a pretty unique perspective on the evolving needs of the commercial spaceflight industry. I wondered if you could share some insight into Colorado Air and Spaceport's role within the national spaceport landscape in terms of operational capabilities and opportunities to attract that commercial spaceflight business.
Sure. So I think as Dave mentioned, you saw that there's a number of spaceports already licensed in the United States. So right now there are 12 sites that have a license to operate as a commercial spaceport. Of those 12, there's 8 that can support horizontal reusable launch vehicles, similar to what's being looked at here at Front Range Airport. And so what's interesting is even though there's 8 sites that can support horizontal launch, every site's really unique. There's a saying in the airport industry, if you've seen one airport, you've seen one airport. The same thing applies to the spaceport industry. And so in the case of Colorado Air and Spaceport, there's a lot of really attractive elements to the spaceport. And Dave highlighted quite a few of those on his slide. What was fascinating to me is just the general proximity to a major metropolitan area like Denver and Colorado Springs and Boulder, where we have such a large concentration of aerospace companies, is very attractive for commercial space companies. It's a very easy way to get into the industry and connect with other companies. The other thing was highlighted was the proximity to Denver International Airport. And so when you look at a lot of the other commercial spaceports around the country, they tend to be in fairly remote places, and they tend to be further away from massive transportation hubs. And so being able to have a location that customers and other members of your company can travel to directly and just be minutes away from your spaceport where you operate at is huge. It's something that you don't see in many other locations. And so I think that's a huge asset for the spaceport here. One of the big things to think about is, and it was mentioned, is that this is really the first step in a much larger process. So, Dave showed on his slides a lot of the future development areas. A lot of that's starting to be planned in, and so now you're looking at taking this license and moving beyond the first step of obtaining the license and actually developing the spaceport and its capabilities. So we're really at an exciting time, because you're at the point now where you actually get to be involved in creating what that future looks like.
So we really are embarking on an exciting time.
It's an incredible time to be involved in the industry.
The time is now. Great. Thank you. Well, following up with the fact that I think it's no secret, especially to this audience, that aerospace is a huge economic driver. According to the Space Foundation's annual space report, in 2018, the global space economy grew by more than 8% and exceeded $400 billion for the first time. And the commercial space sector accounts for about 80% of that global space spending. So here in Colorado, unlike many other states, we benefit from having a dedicated aerospace industry champion, tasked with growing jobs, expanding the industry base, and promoting strategic partnerships that help Colorado aerospace thrive. And you do that just in the morning, right?
Before 9 a.m.
So General Indell, from that perspective, can you talk about how Colorado Air and Spaceport can leverage the aerospace and high-tech industry infrastructure that we already have here in Colorado? And as Colorado Air and Spaceport develops as a commercial space hub, how might that further influence Colorado's role as a leading aerospace state?
Well, thank you for the question, Vicki. The part of aerospace in Colorado and economic development, I really look for opportunity to brand and market aerospace in Colorado as an aerospace state. And until we received our license, I guess just a little over a year ago, we weren't an air and space port. We did not have a spaceport in Colorado. But states like Florida had 3 spaceports. California had 2. Texas had 2 spaceports. But Colorado, employing 29,000 direct employees and 190,000 indirect employees, and one of the leading states in the nation, did not have a spaceport. So this really helps us significantly to market and brand Colorado. And in economic development, you want to seize on all the opportunities you can to help market the state, brand the state, talk about what's in the state, our strengths, our businesses, research and development capability. And this has really been a big plus to be able to label Colorado as an air and space port and include it in a lot of the presentations and briefings, discussions that I do. So it has helped a lot. And I'll tell you, most of our state is national security oriented when it comes to space. And a lot of that is sensitive technology you tend not to talk about. So being able to have a global asset, an international asset as an air and spaceport right here is great to talk about and help market and brand Colorado. And especially in this industry, roughly, if you look at Colorado, about a $350 billion economy, depending on where our state budgeting planning office will make the estimates this year. But $36 billion is aerospace and defense, and you can probably pretty much say that in one word. So over 10% of our economy just based on aerospace and defense. So being able to market with a spaceport really is a significant value. Even though we're years away from a lot of the technology being developed, being able to market it and brand Colorado is extremely important.
And as I think, Jay, you and I have talked sometimes about the fact that Colorado in the past has always been almost the accidental aerospace state, because we have fortunately to have all these amazing space assets that we've inherited in the military space realm. Now is an opportunity for us to be really proactive in defining the future of our aerospace industry and ecosystem moving forward. So it's a great stake in the ground, I think, for that. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
So we all know that the commercial space sector is growing very rapidly, and as it does, more and more R&D and product development is being done by private companies. And that presents some unique opportunities and challenges for those businesses. At the same time, breakthroughs in aerospace technology development also encourage new markets and can become business catalysts across other industry sectors. So to Adrian, I'd like to ask, as a UK company that decided to headquarter its US operations in Colorado and operate at Colorado Air and Spaceport, we'd love to hear more about the factors that influence that decision, and how can Colorado Air and Spaceport support reaction engines as you navigate those challenges of developing a breakthrough technology?
Awesome, thanks, Vicki. A theme of today's event is that Colorado is an awesome aerospace state, and I would like to reiterate that it was a natural choice for a UK company to place their US subsidiary here. The aerospace market is amazing. The availability of workforce talent across the spectrum, also amazing, and frankly, it's just an awesome place to live.
That's right.
Colorado Air and Spaceport, I'll backtrack a little bit. When we were developing our hot test campaign, which we dubbed HTX, we were looking both nationally and internationally for test facilities that would be able to achieve the temperatures and durations that we were hoping to subject our heat exchanger technology to. The HTX test campaign intends to put our pre-cooler through temperatures and pressures that it would experience up to Mach 5 flight. And we looked all over the place and discovered that there wasn't a test facility in the world that would be able to meet those temperature and pressure durations. So the next step was to build our own test facility. And Colorado Air and Spaceport, we met Dave Ruppel at the Space Symposium in 2017, and it was a natural choice. Colorado Air and Spaceport, Dave Ruppel, and all of the staff there, Adams County has been incredibly supportive of our deciding to locate the site there. It enabled us to be closer to our growing US operations. It enabled us to be able to grow as our future test operations develop, and just the support has been amazing. I can't remember the second part of your question. Sorry.
Oh no, we were talking about how reaction engines really is developing. The technology that you're developing is really breakthrough, cutting edge technology. Is there an element of being located at Colorado Air and Spaceport that kind of helps with that challenge of developing the breakthrough technology?
Absolutely. being located at the Colorado Air and Spaceport has provided flexibility and the ability to grow that is very unique and invaluable to our decision to locate there. In addition, we are using a J79 engine out there to achieve these temperatures and pressures, so we're allowed to make a little noise, which is nice.
And how loud is that?
Oh gosh, well, you helped with that, Brian. It gets pretty loud. We do get to afterburner mode, so it's very exciting. As far as Colorado Air and Spaceport helping us with our test campaign out there, the best thing that Colorado Air and Spaceport can do is to continue doing what they've been doing all along, which is celebrating our successes alongside us, continuing to support our growth. We knew that Colorado Air and Spaceport was an amazing place to locate our test facility, but we never could have imagined how gracious and supportive and amazing the staff has been there. In addition, as comes with our aerospace territory and breakthroughs in technology, there are a lot of regulations to navigate. There are a lot of government agencies that we need to partner with. There are several permits that are required to put a test facility in place. And Colorado Air and Spaceport helped us establish those partnerships with Adams County and with the FAA, helped us navigate those regulations, and continue to do so today as we grow.
Thank you to you and your team for joining us today. Could you please tell us about your goals for offering spaceflight for passengers? And what made you decide to explore Colorado Air and Spaceport as a potential basis for your operations?
Okay. The first of all, this location, the first mile is free. It's important thing for
this is true.
For space tourism. Yeah. Honestly, my company is very small, tiny company, but thank you for finding us. At first, I don't know which location is the best way. Best location is for us, our development at starting a business. But now I realize this is the best location because there are so many collaboration members. There are many attractive and they have challenging spirits. It's very important. In Japan, many people doesn't take a risk, but in the U.S., many members has a risk. It's very important thing. And now we are small. We have a small funding. Of course, ANA and HS. This is a bit good supported. We have. Of course, the funding is very important thing, but also collaboration and the spirit, they're most important thing, I think. So in this area, I feel the much spirits and opportunity to have a collaboration. So I now not decided to start actually to establish a new company and a new branch in this area, but I want to make a new company in this area near future.
Excellent. That's very good news to hear indeed. Thank you. So as we've heard from Adrian and Shuji, one of the most exciting aspects of the commercial spaceflight industry is the rapid pace of innovation and technology as companies work to develop solutions for the continuously evolving commercial space economy. Horizontal takeoff and landing for space vehicles is a great example of that, and is a capability that Colorado Air and Spaceport is focused on supporting. Frank, the Astra Clipper vehicle that Exodus Space Corporation is developing is being designed as a horizontal launch and landing space plane that's going to transport passengers and cargo, to low Earth orbit. Can you tell us how vehicles like the Astra Clipper can support commercial space industry growth by offering horizontal takeoff and landing? And what makes Colorado and Colorado Air and Spaceport an attractive site for developing that vehicle and your business product?
Well, you know, space planes are not a new concept. They've been around for a while. We were talking about this earlier, since we're both in the space planes. And when I think of space planes originally, I think of the space shuttle. But when we look at the space shuttle, we still look at the space shuttle landing horizontally, but it still takes off vertically. And when you look at the vertical rockets today, 95% still take off vertically. And when I look at that, or when we look at that, it's not a bad thing. I don't want to say it's a bad thing over here. But we've learned a lot of lessons from that, and we learned that, you know, it's not a good, sustainable model in the future. So when we look at the Astro Clipper, we look at some of the benefits that the Astro Clipper from horizontal, you know, takeoff and landing might bring. You know, number one, it's fully reusable. When you look at vertical launchers, there tend to be some leftovers at the bottom of the ocean. There tends to be some space debris from them as well. So again, we want to make sure that there's a fully reusable component here. But we also look at the fact that with the horizontal launcher, we can actually take off and take cargo up, but we can also bring cargo back down. You don't see that a lot with the vertical launchers in this case. For that makes sense for us economically. Every mission, we know we can go up, bring some stuff down. That just makes good business sense. You know, but I look at the last piece, and I think it comes back to frequency. You know, one of the things that we want to see in the future is how do we equate space planes to what we see in the aviation industry? You know, how many flights are there that go from Denver to Los Angeles over a month? Well, how many launches can we do from Colorado to low Earth orbit in a month? So we want to get to a point where we can see that frequency to help bring that cost down. And again, when we look at all these benefits, we always look and say, how does this lead to affordability back to our customers? Because that's the key here. How do we make this affordable? Because in our opinion, the more that you make space affordable, the more you have access to space, okay? And not just for cargo, but for everyone. The more we can access space frequently as an industry, the more we see growth. The more growth we see, the more we see that space economy grow. And overall, that just benefits everyone, in our opinion. Now, to follow up on your second question, Colorado.
Yeah, what aspects of Colorado and Colorado Air and Spaceport can be helpful to you as you do that?
You know, we have our offices here in Littleton, and it just makes sense for us. Number one, every spaceport needs a space plane, and in this case, space planes. You know, you've done a great job of attracting not just Exodus, but other space planes as well, which is the goal overall. But for us, I think there's a couple pieces here. Number one, our suppliers are here. And that plays a big role for us on the technology side when we need to be able to have that face-to-face. Two, our focus is on the satellite industry, and when you look at Colorado, there's over, 400 companies, I think, that are in space or support space, and that's huge. And that's a great company to be in, and when we look at that, we look at a lot of our clients here as well in the satellite industry. And I think third is talent, being able to have access to that talent. But I also think that when we look at this, we know that we're going to attract talent from outside the state. And what better way to convince a family to come to Colorado than just showing them a picture of Colorado or talking about the lifestyle here in Colorado. Those are important factors when families think about relocating, and we think that's a very big factor for us. Now, when it comes to the spaceport, again, it goes back to the fact that it's frequency and location. One of the ideas we have is vehicle launch on demand. We know that some of the satellite companies might need to get a satellite up quickly. So instead of having to ship it to California, Florida, why not just ship it down the road here at the spaceport? And that makes sense for us.
That sounds really good. Yes. And you touched on, Frank, you know, the fact that Colorado has this incredible aerospace economy. We are #1 in the US for private aerospace workers per capita. And one of the other reasons why Colorado's aerospace industry is so strong is because we have this very robust mix of smaller entrepreneurial space companies and large prime contractors who work together to collaborate on the nation's major space projects. And it's an ecosystem that requires both to survive and thrive. Adrian, Suji, and Frank have shared some great insight from the smaller company perspective, but we'd also like to hear from a larger company, and that would be you, Crystal. ULA is one of our anchor aerospace companies. We're delighted Colorado is home to ULA's headquarters and more than 1,000 of your very talented rocket scientists and engineers. So while we know that Colorado Air and Spaceport is not in the market for the type of vertical launch operations that you specialize in, can you tell us how its growth as a hub for commercial space activity can positively impact ULA's operations in Colorado? So are there synergies perhaps that large prime contractors such as ULA can leverage?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things, we are a large contractor, but we have 215 suppliers in the state of Colorado. So when you think about, it's actually 1,100 employees now, but all the jobs that are created from the suppliers, the economic impact to the state over a 5-year spend is near $500 million. And this is a very competitive time in the market right now. It's exciting. It is competitive, and yes, everyone up here, we've been talking about why Colorado is a great place to locate and the capabilities that are here in the workforce, but we would be remiss, and obviously I'm in government affairs, but the delegation that Colorado has, Congressman Perlmutter calls himself a space geek. He's a space rock star in this world, and he really is. And Lieutenant Governor Primavera, came out to see the rocket factory, and the support that the United, the congressional delegation, the state delegation, they need to stay united, because with this competition comes other states who want to take companies out of Colorado and move them to other states, and there's a battle. And so when you ask, what does this ecosystem do? Obviously, growth in Colorado is good for ULA. It helps us with our workforce. It helps us, but organizations such as Colorado Space Coalition, Colorado Space, CSBR, all these things, the more of a strength in industry that we have, that's more firepower that we give to those associations, that we give to the people on the Hill, that we give to our state leaders. So, what's good for Colorado is great for ULA, and we have been fortunate that we have the members that we can reach out to and say, we need your support on this. There are jobs at risk. The national security is at risk. And so I think that the growth of this ecosystem is beneficial to the state. It's beneficial to all of us, and our representatives should be commended for what they do for us as a state.
Thank you, and thank you for mentioning too that the threat of competition from other states could not be more real. It is. It can be pretty brutal, and it's something that on a daily basis we're dealing with. And as you mentioned, that having that strength of congressional support has been phenomenal and has been responsible for so much of the success. Actually, going back to Brian for a little bit, because Crystal, you mentioned kind of that legislative piece, that legislative advocacy piece. We've been hearing, Brian, some of the reasons why Colorado Air and Spaceport is so well suited to capture space business, but are there national policy or regulatory efforts that we really should be tracking or influencing in order to maximize Colorado Air and Spaceport's potential for space business?
Yeah, the regulatory framework is constantly evolving. So right now there's existing regulations in place for commercial space flight, but the FAA has recently undertook some rulemaking, initiated a rulemaking process for regulatory reform for launch licensing. I know Colorado Air and Spaceport and other stakeholders here in the state were involved in the regulatory, it was called an Aviation Rulemaking Committee, to help review the proposed rules and provide insight to the FAA. Those types of activities should continue. The notice of proposed rule is out now, currently being reviewed by the public, and probably within 6 months or so we expect to have some kind of decision on that. In addition, that's mostly for launch licensing, but in the near term we'll also have some new rules coming out for launch site licensing. So we'll need to be able to monitor that to see what the impacts are of any proposed rules on how the operation of the spaceport is. Other elements that are typical for spaceports usually revolve around environmental. So the FAA does a really great job when it comes to safety and environment. But one of the challenges can be just with the timelines associated with environmental reviews. So if there's anything that we can do to help to streamline some of those timelines to help make those more manageable, I think would be huge.
And could you give a sense of those timelines? I know they probably vary from spaceport to spaceport in terms of the experience.
Sure, it can vary greatly. We've seen anything from a 2-year time frame to a 6 to 7-year time frame for environmental reviews. And so when a site is looking at getting a license, those timelines can be very worrisome, especially if you have maybe an operator that wants to come and utilize the facility. It can take a long time to go through that process. Now that the spaceport has its license and has completed that process, it's in a good position. But I think there's reason that those timelines should be a lot shorter, and I think we need to focus on trying to find ways to help that.
Okay, good. So you're going to take care of that, right?
Trying.
Okay, so education, aerospace workforce is a theme that comes up time and time again, I think, in all the panel discussions we have, all the meetings we have around Colorado Aerospace. How do we ensure that we have a robust pipeline of talented workers that are going to continue to fuel our leading aerospace workforce? So I think, for maybe start off with Crystal with this question, but as you develop cutting-edge technology and for your space vehicles, what are your workforce needs? And are you finding qualified workers? Are there changes in skill sets and expertise? Does that aerospace worker of tomorrow look different to the one of today?
I don't know so much about different, but obviously with what's going on in this state, the need is growing. This is already a competitive marketplace for finding these workers and retaining them. Constant need for aerospace engineers, mechanical engineers, software engineers. Obviously for ULA, with us being headquartered here, we also have needs for finance and HR, and so it's not that. The Colorado high schools and the universities here have been a great resource, but with this growth, we're going to have to reach out and get external, outside of Colorado, bring in this talented workforce and continue with this stream. One thing that ULA does is we have a robust internship program, and we pull in from 50 universities across the United States every year, and that is a workforce that we, for the most part, retain. And so, and FYI, that application process starts on Labor Day, and it's a heavily sought-after program that closes quite quickly. But that's something that a lot of these companies and the industry needs to be aware of, is that we've got to start bringing in from outside the state, because there's going to be a demand for it as these people continue to work so hard to bring in more jobs.
Exactly. So the problem definitely isn't solved. We still have to keep pushing for growing a homegrown Colorado aerospace workforce, and that is going to take multiple approaches, reaching out to kids of all levels for exposure and experience in the industry.
We want to bring a man to the stage that has experience in all 3 areas. Oh yeah, he was a congressman too, and is now called the governor of the state that he has always called home. Please help me welcome the governor of Colorado, Jared Polis. The governor was gracious enough to host us last night at a state dinner, so we had a chance to meet the team from PD Aerospace and proved to be a great host. We really do appreciate it. One more time for Governor Polis. All right, thank you. Right down the bottom.
Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate the kind introduction. I want to extend my gratitude to Adams County Manager Ray Gonzalez and the delegation from Japan, including the leadership team from PD Aerospace and ANA, for spending the last week in Colorado. We had a wonderful opportunity to welcome them yesterday at the Governor's Mansion. We shared our famous Colorado sake with them, and they were suitably impressed. I'm glad I was able to get here to catch the tail end of the panel of experts. The aerospace industry in Colorado is a huge source of pride and jobs, and my administration will do everything we can to match the passion that you bring to the aerospace industry to help make sure that the state supports the inspiring work being done all over Colorado. For decades, our colleges and universities and military installations have helped create a key pipeline of talent that has helped advance innovation and technology across the aerospace sector and truly made Colorado a great leader. And today we're proud that we have not only the second highest concentration of college-educated employees in America, but the highest concentration of aerospace employees anywhere in the country. The University of Colorado receives more NASA funding than any other public university in America. Our School of Mines is first place in the world to offering advanced degrees in space mining. It's an emerging market. And students at Metro State University in Denver have access to hands-on experience working in satellite manufacturing facilities on campus. Look, from astronauts to engineers to pilots to global positioning satellites to ground support, Colorado is producing graduates that are advancing our understanding of space and the future of the aerospace industry. And we're going to need all of that. We already have one of the largest aerospace economies in the country. In fact, 9 of the nation's top aerospace contractors have significant operations in Colorado. And of course, we're very excited about adding the future with adding PD Aerospace, Reaction Engines, and so many other visionary companies to that growing list of successful aerospace stories in Colorado. Coloradans have always fostered big dreams and encouraged innovation. And we're looking forward to working with our local leadership, business leadership, and federal leadership to help create the ideal atmosphere for the further success of the aerospace industry in Colorado. I want to thank all of the speakers and panelists for sharing their brain power with us today. And I always love to talk about aerospace in Colorado, and of course, especially here where the first mile is free. We have enormous opportunities for aerospace industry not only to be part of Colorado's past and part of our present, but an even greater part of Colorado's future. Thank you.
We want to thank the governor. He has had a busy schedule the last couple days and found time for both of us last night and then again today to come by. It shows you his commitment, his administration's commitment to the aerospace industry. Vicki is coming back up. We're going to continue our panel discussion, and then we are briefly going to open up the floor for questions. So if you have heard something, be prepared. We'll have a roaming microphone. Gabe will walk around. Just put your hand in the air and we'll get to you as soon as we can. But I think Vicki wants to continue with that workforce discussion, so we'll allow that, and then some Q&A from the crowd.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I just wanted to give other panelists the opportunity to comment on that workforce question as appropriate for your various industries. If not, no worries, but Frank, would you like to?
Well, you know, as a startup, we are challenged to find talent. We do have talent right now. It is, you know, it is going to be challenging, and I think as we grow, it gets even more challenging for us. You know, this is where we want to develop more relationships with some of the local schools, the universities, and I think, as you were saying, we have to search outside the state of Colorado. But I think that's where it comes back again to say, you know, the lifestyle here in Colorado, the being able to convince people to come and move their families here. They're concerned about the education for their children, and I think that plays a big role there. But it also goes back to going to the universities and trying to have that direct conversation of what we need, what our needs are. We don't know what all of our needs are right now. We're still in that early stage, or the early stages. But I think it's having that discussion and that dialogue that when we get to that point, we can start having that conversation of, we see these type of needs. What can you guys do? Do we need to direct or create a curriculum that's more specific? Things like that. So I think it's just being able to have those conversations initially right now till we get to that point.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Vicki, just to add, you know, in economic development, I hear from businesses across all advanced industry sectors, workforce, workforce, workforce. It's not only engineering talent, it's technical talent to fill all the jobs here in Colorado. And we're lucky that our mountains still sell. They market Colorado. We attract, of our growth in population, 65% is net in-migration. We're attracting talented people to come fill jobs in Colorado, but still it is our main issue, is how do we better educate, how do we better train our apprenticeship programs? The answer, some say that we need to start earlier with apprenticeships. We need to hook the kids younger into technical talent, talk about aerospace engineering. There's no easy answer on this, not at all, and we just got to keep working it hard.
But on the plus side, we have a whole host of Colorado aerospace ambassadors, both in this room and around the state, who I think can be helping to spread that message and really help make connections between education, industry, and our economic development industry stakeholders too. So as we mentioned, we do want to open it up to some Q&A from the audience. If there have been topics or points that our panelists have raised that you would like to pick up on, or if you just have a separate question that you would like to pose, now is the time.
Hi, I'd like to follow up on that workforce question. You've mentioned high schools and universities, but I also want to remind you we have a really robust community college system here that serves as a pipeline for these aerospace jobs and technician and engineering positions. So how is the Air and Spaceport and the companies planning to work with them? How are you planning to engage all parts of the educational pipeline in terms of research opportunities, internships, those sorts of things?
Anybody would like to jump in? Adrian?
I'm not sure if I'll answer this question directly, but I'll give it a shot. I can speak for Reaction Engines. While building our test facility, I absolutely agree that that aspect of the educational curriculum is crucial. We would be remiss if we didn't mention the civil engineering firms such as Kimley Horn. We have architects that helped us along the way. Certainly very talented welders and technicians all throughout building our test facility. And so in addition to the aerospace jobs that we have been discussing so far, I do agree with the remainder of my panelists that there's all kinds of different careers that are crucial to this aerospace industry, from finance to marketing to export compliance to technicians, welders, etc. So anything that we can do to support bringing in internships to our company certainly is something that we would like to pursue as we grow.
Anybody else? Would you like Shuji?
In Japan also internship program. So we start internship program 4 years ago. So far we had maybe over 20 students we accepted. Almost the student is overseas student. Now we are open from freshman by university. So if you have a interest in Japan to join our program, please call us.
Frank?
You know, just to add on, and again, I know that we're still in our early stages, but one of the things that we look at also is the education at a younger age also. You know, we work with the Space Foundation and want to work with them more to understand some of the programs that they have in place on the education side and say, what can we contribute back to that type of program or those programs across the board that will help prepare that future workforce. So that's one of the things that we are looking at in the future.
So providing that early exposure as well as
experience. Because we think it's a learning process at all levels
Yeah.
at that age, you know.
Vicki, if I could add, I chair a board with the University of Colorado. It's the Colorado Space Grant Consortium, 21 colleges and universities. Most of them are community colleges. And we have events, projects at different schools and universities, including the community colleges. And we get so many on the community college point that for the first time they're introduced to space and aerospace. and go, wow, this is cool, space is cool. Then we're able to talk about schools where you can get a aerospace engineering degree or any kind of engineering degree. In fact, there's more mechanical engineers than aerospace engineers in our businesses in Colorado. But I think that hook of telling the story, reaching out to all these colleges, university kids, that especially in community colleges where, wow, this is cool, where can I get a 4-year degree? And many do transfer in to CU Boulder and get a 4-year degree. And this is a NASA-funded program with a Space Grant Consortium, and a little bit of dollars really goes a long way here in Colorado.
Great. Thank you. Do we have another question from the audience? But as we kind of go around and we meet different aspects of the aerospace industry, it seems to me there's a lot of misconceptions about aerospace, space, defense. And I'm wondering, to our panel, what are common misconceptions people have about spaceports and the commercial spaceflight industry? How can we combat these misconceptions and communicate realities more effectively?
I can jump in. You know, one of the interesting things that I hear a lot with folks that I talk to is that NASA is the only game in town. And what's interesting is the amount of activity happening from a commercial launch side, from all the companies, you know, ULA, SpaceX, Blue Origin. There's all this commercial activity that's happening, and very little of that's actually tied directly to NASA. And so I think there's, you know, one of the things we can do as an industry is just help to educate other folks that there's more out there besides NASA, and that the commercial industry is doing some really exciting things that are very entrepreneurial and very innovative.
Crystal, did you? Oh, here you go ahead.
Just to add on to that, I think every time you talk about a spaceport, you think there has to be a space plane. It's not just about space planes. I think when you look at spaceports, it's about the industry as a whole. It's different pieces of the industry and the space industry working together, building a bigger piece. Having a space plane does help, by the way, but I think it's the whole, exactly. It's that whole piece coming together.
I'm trying to think of a politically correct way to respond. Well, I think a common misconception, and going back to that, is that government, you know, that multi-billionaires are funding their companies by themselves and not getting government dollars, because that is also a falsity. You know, these companies, it is a competitive market, and everyone is utilizing the resources and trying to aim for national security and assured access to space. So, you know, back to the delegation, the idea is let's keep an even playing field and make sure that the facts are out there, and that it is an open playing field in a competitive market.
Yeah, there's sort of a misconception that prime contractors aren't investing their own money so much as the entrepreneurial ones, but that's not necessarily the case. So, Adrian?
I also just wanted to build on to your point, Frank, about a spaceport not just being about space planes. Our test facility, TF2, we've been able to achieve Mach 3.3 temperatures and pressures, and that was enabled by being able to be located at the Colorado Air and Spaceport. We are very much looking forward to Colorado Air Spaceport being a hub, an incubator of that innovation and breakthrough technology that's happening here in Colorado. We're very excited for new neighbors. We hope there's many more to come.
Thank you. And I think we're on just the right track to do that, so cool.
Right, thank you. So I'll repeat the beginning. I'm Anssi from BD Aerospace, and I have a question for the other panelists, apart from my boss, obviously. So that we, BD Aerospace, we are now seriously considering starting operations maybe here in Colorado. So do you have any word of advice for us?
Yes. Make sure you're engaged with our office, because we have advanced industry accelerator grant programs that are designed for your business to grow and develop in Colorado. So you need to be fully engaged with our office, with our state incentives, because we can really help you out. As we've helped a lot of businesses in Colorado grow and develop into larger businesses in this community, and it's designed for startup businesses wanting to plant, want to grow, want to develop. to give you that edge to grow your business in Colorado. So make sure you're engaged with our office, and I know you already are.
Great advice there. So I think we're reaching the end of our time here, so I would just like to conclude with one kind of quick fire question to each of our panelists. What is the best piece of practical advice you would give to someone who is considering a career or starting their own business in a spaceport or commercial spaceflight industry?
Who's first?
Sure, I'd just say be patient. The industry, it does move fast, but it still moves slower than you typically expect. So, over time, you will get there, but sometimes it just takes a little bit longer to go down that path.
Yeah.
So patience.
Patience.
Yeah, very good point, what Brian just said, because, and I work multiple industry sectors in Colorado, but for aerospace, the time to mature and grow and develop technology, attract that investment is much longer, where you might find software development, software company, 2 to 3 years and they're flourishing. In aerospace, it could be 7 to 9 years. So patience and persistence for the small businesses to grow.
I would say utilize the assets that the state already has and the organizations and the leaders and, I don't know in other industries what it's like, but aerospace tends to have this, what's good for space is good for all of us. I mean, yes, there's the competition, there's that, but I think that there are many organizations and outreach to help you get that workforce, to help you get the grants. So I would say to look into those and utilize them.
So there's a lot of support out there, especially here in Colorado. Cool. Frank?
What I recommend is I think it's, when you talk about the space industry, it's not just about engineers. It's not just about mechanical aerospace. You have marketing people, you have accounting people. I was given this question some time back, and my recommendation is, you don't have to be an engineer to be in the space industry. You can go and be an accountant. You can go and be I'm a marketing guy. I'm a digital guy. I'm a marketing guy. I'm an AI guy. So for me, it's a little unique, but I recommend to anyone, if you're interested, try the larger companies, try the startups. Always try to find an angle to come in to get into the space industry. And I think that's very important to think about.
Great advice. Adrian?
In addition, developing relationships and attending networking events like this is extremely important across commercial and government sectors. The technologies that all of my fellow panelists are working on, it is a breakthrough technology, and the U.S. government and regulations are working to evolve as we evolve as well. So it's important to keep those conversations going so that we can do what's best for each other.
Great point.
Okay.
Shuji.
Okay. So most important piece for Colorado and space, I think it might be my company. I do my best. Each other.
Wow. I think that is a great note to finish on. Our panel has been wonderful this afternoon. They've given us such great insights and their expertise. And thanking them, giving them a round of applause.
At this time, I'd like to invite the visionary leader of Adams County, the 2019 City or County Manager of the Year in Colorado, Adams County Manager Raymond Gonzalez, with some closing remarks and a glance into the future at Colorado Air and Spaceport that you're not going to want to miss. Ray?
Thanks, Jim. I'd also like to thank all of our speakers and panelists for lending their perspective and insight to the discussions today. We will begin our networking session in just a few moments, but first, I'd like to leave you with a few thoughts and a video that illustrates the future at Colorado Air and Spaceport. First, I'd like to recognize my staff in Adams County, all of our economic development partners, including Adams County Economic Development Corporation, Aurora Economic Development, Brighton Economic Development, the City of Aurora, City of Westminster, Denver South ED Partnership, and REAP. They put together an incredible event, and I'd like to give them a round of applause. We have earned our site operator's license. We wanted to ensure that Colorado Air and Spaceport was more than an Adams County or Denver metro area asset. Our goal has been to engage stakeholders across the state and even around the world to create a home for the ambitious plans, projects, and dreams already circulating in Colorado aerospace industry. This will be a spaceport that welcomes proven operators and pioneers who are on the cusp of what's next. This facility will continue to receive support from government agencies at every level. We want to work with you to create a business-friendly environment at Spaceport that is uniquely positioned and poised to succeed. So what does that look like? We enlisted our communications team with an assist from Kimley Horn to take us into the future. Here's what operations at Colorado Air and Spaceport might look like in the year 2026.
What was a distant dream a few years ago will be a reality a few years from today.
Are you ready to go to space today?
Yeah.
Watch.
The champagne is flying in the locker room as the Colorado Rockies win the 2026 World Series. And that means you can expect a victory parade in downtown Denver later this week. Jeremy Aristea, back to you.
That's going to be an incredible experience. Thank you, Nick. Another celebration underway at Colorado Air and Spaceport.
And so this brand new state-of-the-art terminal now open for space tourism, microgravity research, someday soon point-to-point travel.
With a site operator's license, Colorado Air and Spaceport is already attracting international aerospace companies like Reaction Engines from the United Kingdom and Japan's PD Aerospace. Located just 30 minutes from downtown Denver, Colorado Air and Spaceport is in the heart of the Rocky Mountain West, providing the ideal location to attract space tourists while also serving the hundreds of aerospace companies that already call Colorado home. With more than 1,000 acres of land ready for development in the state known as Aerospace Alley, Colorado Air and Spaceport is attracting attention from all corners of the globe. Whether performing high-profile operations, cutting-edge research, or critical training sessions, the companies that arrive early will help shape the future of this property. These companies will benefit from the second highest educated workforce in America, with access to exceptional engineering universities to help attract and retain top aerospace employees, all while ensuring future growth and endless opportunities operating at Colorado Air and Spaceport. This is the place where 21st century jobs will help 21st century dreams become a reality. It's all possible at Colorado Air and Spaceport, where the first mile is free.
I'd like to thank our communications team and our partners at Kimley Horn for that glimpse into the future. Let's give them a round of applause. Again, thank you all for joining us for these presentations and panel discussions on the Day of Aerospace. I encourage all of you to take advantage of our remaining time together to make connections and discuss the opportunities you've heard about today and your ideas for the future. Additionally, we have a group of exhibiting organizations set up behind you, including Colorado Air and Spaceport, ready to talk to you about what direction they're headed in and how you can get involved. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to partnering with you in the future. Thank you.